Hey, it's Christine here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Co-Living Code Show, where we bring on experts from around the world that are in the co-living industry on a daily basis. This week we have Romulo, who's originally from Peru, but has been traveling and living abroad for the last few years, being based now in Porto, Portugal. He has scouted for the best startups in Latin America with Seedstars, which is a Swiss-based company that impacts people's lives in emerging markets through technology and entrepreneurship, with whom he also started the Seedspace project, a network of co-working and co-living spaces in emerging markets. Having 5 co-living spaces in 4 continents, Seedspace grew from 2 locations to 10 in just 1 year, and now they have 13 hubs around the world. Recently, he had been starting to see a way to promote entrepreneurial education with new programs for startups in the hubs, but also virtually, giving birth to the Investment Readiness Program, a program that challenges the traditional acceleration concept. When he is not in calls in crazy time zones around the world, Romulo likes to cook, swim, karaoke, and learn new languages. He already speaks 5. You can check out and learn more about Seedstars and Seedspace at the links below in the description. And, it's funny, I met him earlier this year. I spoke at their conference, beginning of April, and then he actually spoke at the Co-Living Hub conference in Spain back in April this year. So it was really cool to get him on to talk about what Seedstars does and, how they evolved with Seedspace, putting these entrepreneurs living together in cities around the world. So enjoy this week's episode. Hello, everybody. It's Christine here again with another episode of the Co-Living Code Show, where I bring on experts and industry leaders in the co-living industry, which is a nascent industry, but it's growing very quickly. So it's fun to get these interviews each week with people from around the world. And I am excited today because we're bringing on Romulo, who I actually personally know because I spoke at one of his conferences for Seedstars back in Switzerland earlier this year. And then he spoke at the Co-Living Hub conference in Spain in April. So we shared a stage there. And he is doing some incredible things with Seedstars and Seedspace. So first, let's have you talk about Seedstars and what you guys are doing around the world in emerging markets for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And thank you, Christine, for having me on the show. I'm really thrilled. So Seedstars, yeah. So our mission is to impact people's lives in emerging markets, like you said, and we do that through 2 things. So entrepreneurship and technology. We invest in early stage startups, and we also do acceleration programs, incubation programs to kind of train and bring entrepreneurial education to these emerging markets. And also we have coworking and co-living. So the story is quite interesting. So, we started doing these pitching events 6 years ago, trying to find like the best entrepreneur of each country in emerging markets. And we started to build up a community because people were really excited that they were going to pitch and then getting selected to fly to Switzerland to represent their country. And eventually they will have the chance in Switzerland to get up to $1 million in investment. And with this, when we came back each year, people were like, oh my God, Seedstars is coming again. We need to apply, we need to get ready. And they were really attentive to the date and everything. That naturally and very organically, without us even realizing, we were building up a community of people that really felt some attachment to Seedstars and to the brand and as a whole. And it's so cool because, like in Latin America, somebody from Brazil was meeting somebody from Lebanon and then somebody from Malaysia, and they had the same struggles, they had the same challenges, but they also had the same drive for becoming entrepreneurs. So 4 years ago, when I joined the Seedstars tribe, one of the projects that we wanted to push forward was Seedspace, which was co-working and co-living hubs. Back in the day, we only had the one for Switzerland, the one in Geneva, that was kind of the home for people of Seedstars to work on. And then people were, in our conversations, they were asking, hey, why don't you bring Seedspace to Lagos? Or why don't you bring Seedspace to Cape Town and so on? So it is in these like casualties that we realized, okay, there is something interesting going on here around co-working, but also co-living. And that is how we pretty much started with the Seedspace, which is kind of the baby. And we grew from 2 locations to 13 in 1 year. So that was a
Oh,
ride.
and that's just in the last 4 years that you've been there on the team?
Yeah, so we were in the beginning, we were not actually expanding. We had like only Geneva and then Nigeria and then South Africa. So it was very, let's say, up to 4 hubs. And then we had last year, it was crazy. We grew up exponentially, of course, with regional teams looking for opportunities where we could actually find the right partner, the right location, the right business model. But yeah, it was all right. And now we are in, so I can guide you through the different locations where we are. So we have in Geneva in Switzerland, we have in Cairo in Egypt, in Casablanca in Morocco. We've also got in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, Lagos, Nigeria, Cape Town, South Africa, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Nur Sultan in Kazakhstan, Yangon, Myanmar, and in my side of the world, so in Latin America, we've got Mexico, Mexico City, and then Colombia and Lima in Peru.
And
So
those
yeah.
are all the Seedstar locations, right? Which is, again, like you said, it's kind of a hybrid of an accelerator, incubator, kind of all of the above for entrepreneurs around the world. And then how about for Seedspaces? I know you guys have, what is it, 5 locations?
No, so actually these are the seed spaces, because Seedstars has presence in more than 80 countries around the world. So where we do events or acceleration programs, like we've done recently an acceleration program in Bangladesh, and we don't have a hub over there. So the seed spaces are the ones that I just mentioned, and within this seed space universe, we've got 5 with CoLiving.
Perfect. And which cities are those for the co-living ones?
Yeah, so that's Colombia, that's Tanzania, Ivory Coast, Kazakhstan, and Switzerland.
Nice. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I know you love to travel, and I know you know 5 languages, right? Which 5 languages do you speak? That is so impressive.
So Spanish is my Latino roots. So I speak Spanish, English, French, Portuguese. I had to learn it because I lived in Brazil and now I'm based in Portugal. So I get to practice it. And my last acquisition was Italian.
Nice. Good for you. I love it. I love it. World traveler. Okay, so let's see, obviously you guys started in Switzerland, which is not an emerging market. And so what are some big differences once you guys started opening up those co-living spaces in emerging markets, which I'm sure there's a big difference. Like what were some lessons you guys learned?
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely we had to do our homework. There is definitely a cultural aspect to be taken into consideration. The right location of the space is pivotal. Like what would be the financial district in I don't know, in Geneva, it would be very attractive to have a hub. It might not be the same in another city. Also in emerging markets, you have these mega cities, so location and access to metro or bus is pivotal. So kind of really understanding what's the concept, because we couldn't just copy paste what we had in Switzerland. We really had to dig in a little bit more. So that on one side, and then regarding the market, there is an entire behavior of people and then demand. So certain people, for example, for the coworking, they were wanting more private offices rather than open space areas. And in CoLiving, we had the same issue. In some locations, we had more people like internationals traveling to the city wanting to stay. And in other places, there were more locals. And in other places, internationals were actually, like corporates. And, they want something very high end. And in others, we had like people that were more like easygoing when traveling and wanted to stay and really penetrate with the culture locally. So we had to find the sweet spot of product market fit in each of the locations. And we're still actually trying to find this in some locations. So that was it. But something that we always do, by the way, is we try to have something local in the space. Either it's a painting from a local artist or a painter or a piece of decoration that can bring something to the hub of the country where it is located, but also we bring the global aspect. So we put pictures of our community around the world in the wall so that people can feel that they are part of something bigger.
Oh my gosh, I love, love, love that. And I mean, you guys, for Seedstars, like you just saw like how much the it's such a team atmosphere. Like you guys were wearing Seedstars jackets and like I loved it going to that conference. And it's so, I mean, you're right. I think people want to belong to something bigger just as humans, right? Plug into a community. And especially in emerging market, I think it's just that added additional support that they probably need to feel comfortable to do. A lot of these are global technology firms and platforms,
Yeah.
I love that. That is amazing. And then I know you've stayed. So as a co-liver, so again, you're the one that's kind of facilitating co-living for other people, but I know you also are a co-liver sometimes. So I'd love to touch on that. Like you obviously stay on site, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to actually experience it by myself, this co-living entire atmosphere. And I think that when you go to a co-living space that it's of yours, you are kind of touching and testing everything, because you want to, from the moment that they open you the door, you are analyzing, like the entire customer journey experience. And this is the moment where they give me the keys, and this is how they are giving me the instructions, or this is how the bed actually feels and the pillow and so on. So I'm a little bit like positive critical when I'm in an own co-living space. But when I'm in another co-living space, I just like try to relax and soak in as much as I can to benchmark and see, this is really cool. These guys are really rocking into this, and so on. So I really, really like both experiences. I need to admit that when I'm in a seed space, I like to talk to the community just to understand a little bit like what's their background, what draw them to Seedspace. And many times, I don't like to say that I'm part of the team of Seedspace. So I just go there like a normal co-liver, going around, and people tell you stuff because they know that you're not part of the team officially, until I tell them, oh yeah, I work here. Like I'm part of the entire team. So this has been fun to kind of spy a little bit our own customers. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
Didn't you say like take pictures sometimes? You're like sending it to the team. Hey, we got it.
Yeah, like I take pictures with the phone of, okay, this has to be changed. This could be a little bit better, because I think that when you are managing something remotely, it's okay because you can also have like a non-biased perspective of many things, and you cannot be influenced or stuff like that, and you can kind of share the best practices from Dar es Salaam with Nur Sultan, and then that one with Abidjan. But when you are on the ground, it's only there that when you realize the small details, and that is very important to be detail oriented in any industry, but in the co-living industry particularly as well, because in the end we are serving people and community. So yeah, I tend to realize these little details that I don't realize over video conference, and I start to take pictures and send those over. But yeah,
Here's some pictures off my phone. Oh, I love that. No. And hey, you're one of, I can relate wholeheartedly, right? Because I do both also. I've lived in my concepts, I've lived in other people's concepts, and it is day and night because it's your product. So you want everything to be perfect and such a great experience. And so you're always on trying to make sure everything's perfect. You don't relax as much. And then and when I live at someone else's concept. And I like that you said that. I think for people listening and watching, don't be afraid to go and visit other concepts, and just see best practices. Cause I've learned some really cool things that then we can implement. Like, wow, that's really neat. I like how they do that. So that's
absolutely
great.
Yeah. And even people, they might be in a living space where you're staying, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm looking for my next destination to be in Colombia. Like, oh, by the way, we've got a co-living space in Medellin. So you can also nurture from lead acquisition and community expansion, I think, which is great.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite city? Are you allowed to say a favorite city in the world that you like?
So I get that question a lot, also from my favorite country. It really is difficult to answer because there's places that you would love to live in. There's places that you like to visit. There's places that you want to just go on holiday. So it's hard. The last country that I recently discovered, which I absolutely loved, was Turkey. I went to Istanbul, to Cappadocia, and I was mesmerized. So I would say that's my answer.
Okay, no, that you just, a housemate of mine, he just got back. So no, I've heard amazing things about Turkey. So,
It's amazing. It's amazing.
ooh.
It's really cool. It's such a cosmopolitan city, Istanbul. I think it has so much potential as well for co-living eventually. Yeah.
Oh, good. No, that's good to hear too. So let's see. So how you guys have partnered with a big hotel operator at one of your locations, correct?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. You remember well. Exactly. So in Kazakhstan, we open a co-living space, working in co-living space in the same building at the Hilton in Nur Sultan. So it's very interesting, I think, to see how two accommodation providers, suppliers, can be in the same building harmonically. At the end of the day, we serve different communities. Our concept is entirely different. Our prices is, of course, different. But it's interesting to see how these players are also starting to become more curious into the concept of co-living, and it, hopefully, it eventually will become a case study. So let's see how that rolls.
Oh, good. And then how many rooms do you guys have in that hotel?
In Kazakhstan, so there's a hotel, and then below that it's us, with our own hub and co-working, and in the co-living units we
Mm,
got seven rooms.
7 rooms. And then how many people do you guys put per room?
So in Kazakhstan, we're lucky because the units are big enough to accommodate 2 people, but in other locations, we just can accommodate one person, but there is room for 2 people in some of them. Yeah, our biggest offer is in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. We've got 19 en-suite units, so with their own kitchenette and with their own bathroom, and there's a pool on the rooftop, and then you go down to the co-working space to work. So it's really cool. You should come visit sometime.
Oh, I definitely want to visit. I definitely want to visit that location. How many beds do you guys have total amongst
Mm,
all 5 locations?
it will be around 60 locations, 60 beds.
60 beds, 60
Yeah.
people living there. And then what's the average term? And again, I'm sure it totally is based on city. What's the average term of stay?
Mm. Last time we did the calculations, we were around 4 months, but it's mostly because it's very leaning towards those spaces that we have a lot of long-term tenants. So for example, in Geneva, we have tenants that have stayed for up to 1 year and a half. So that really like draws the average weight to that point. Um, and that's mainly because they're locals. There are interns that are working for some organization in Geneva and so on. But then we have other locations like Medellin, in which the average stay is much shorter. So we can be anything between 5 days to 1 week. So that's an entire different way of acquiring these co-livers, but also the service that we have to have with them is completely different for somebody long-term. So it's quite interesting to see. There is no copy paste. We need to understand the local market. We need to understand also the city, how the city wants to, is driving more tourists or is driving more digital nomads or intercity. So in the same country, there's people moving to the city and they're looking for co-living as an alternative way of accommodation. So yeah, and then hence the length of stay really varies a lot.
No, and then that's a good point too. We could talk about is the cities. So do you guys come in and partner with the actual cities and say, hey, this is, because I know some of these cities really, really they want the innovation. They want the tech startups to come in for a multitude of reasons, obviously. Do you guys partner with the cities first before you guys go into the town?
Not necessarily. We do have touch points with the city halls or the local, even eventually regional or national government. But so far, it is not like a decision on opening a co-living space or not. But it is true. It is one more option for accommodation in the city, and eventually can attract more people as well. I mean, not the co-living space per se, but just the communities are coming here and things are happening and connections are being made. It kind of puts the city into like the light.
No, and especially with these emerging markets, right? Because I think that's the boost that they really need and want to
Yeah,
drive that. And because
yeah.
entrepreneurs coming living with you, right? You guys said you have so interns sometimes, corporate partners. Like, what's the demographic mix usually at Seedspaces?
Yeah. So even though at Seedstars, we focus on entrepreneurs, so in startups, we do have a wide range of stakeholders that are also impacted by what we do. So in here, you got, for example, investors, corporates that are having a digital transformation agenda, are interested in innovation. government officials and incubator accelerators, other co-working spaces, and so on. So it is very varied. We do not accept only entrepreneurs or only startups. We're quite open into what offering is. But yes, you can expect that if you come to our space, it will be filled up with entrepreneurial quotes. You will see a lot of startup pictures from other parts of the world, and we'll probably be hosting many events around startups and entrepreneurials like growth hacking and, I don't know, pitching and fundraising strategy and so on. But we are quite open. And I think the demographic is very varied. It really depends on the city. Again, some cities are more prone to bring like international, let's say, travelers. Others are more local. So it's very varied. But it's a good thing that you mentioned about the city or the corporates and so on, because I'm starting to realize some changes into mentality, into the mindset. So we recently had a development bank, which, you know, they're normally very formal and very suit and tie and everything. And they stayed in our co-living space, in one of our co-living spaces in Africa. So it was really cool to see how they are even willing to explore, just because they want to be closer to the entrepreneur. They want to be closer to what's really happening. So yeah.
Oh, that's neat. So you've been doing this for 4 years. You've been very, very deeply involved. So you've just seen that trend in like the last year or two, you think?
Yeah, and you know, in the beginning, I didn't see many co-living spaces, really. Like I was looking for a book because I wanted to read more about co-living so that I can nurture myself and know a little bit more about the industry, because I was also like a newbie in all of this. And I remember putting several times in Amazon co-living, nothing would be popping out. And one day your book popped out. And that is how I started to read it. And eventually we established this connection. But yeah, back in the day, like 3 years ago, it was not heard. There was no benchmark. There was nothing about it. Like even landlords, they were very skeptical about this kind of business model. Legislations, they don't talk about it. It's very gray zone. So I've definitely seen an increase, which is great for the industry. And yeah, and it's just really cool. And also in emerging markets, I was recently in Bali, and I've seen, like, I type co-living Bali, and just like tons of co-living spaces.
I think it's such a digital nomad hub, because they've jumped on it quick. But it's super exciting to also see it in, you know, Kenya and all these, you know, when you see co-living popping up in other emerging markets that aren't digital nomad friendly, then I get really excited, because I'm like, okay, this is really becoming a thing. And it's really cool to see that happening around the world. So that's so funny. So me and you were searching on Amazon probably around the same time. That's why I wrote the book. I'm like, nobody wrote a book on co-living, like, because I had searched for like 6 months before I started writing my book.
Yeah.
And now there's still not one yet. It's like a year later. But a lot on co-housing, but co-housing is a very different model. But well, good stuff. That's exciting. Good deal. So let's see, what other questions do I have? So we kind of talked about, you know, the types of people living, the different areas. What are some regions you guys are getting ready to get into?
So right now we are in Latin America, Africa. We don't have a co-living yet in the Middle East. We have one in Asia, but specifically we're looking to expand in Southeast Asia. We're seeing some opportunities there, so I hope to give some good news about that soon. Yeah,
that's awesome. No, that's perfect. We love it. Yeah, you guys are up to some big things. So you guys are doing good in the world. We love seeing that, with especially emerging markets. You know,
how are you in the industry? I think it's really important, like, to have a reference. So I think kind of literature and things that you can read and conferences and that just helps the industry as a whole. So and more people are looking into the industry, and I don't know what's the value of the co-living industry. I think I saw the amount the other day, but it's just like increasingly growing over the years, and the interest as well of real estate developers. So yeah, really looking forward what's going to happen on that.
No, for sure. And again, I think this is why it's fun. Yeah, I can write a book and that's what I'm talking about. But I'd much rather, instead of hearing myself talk, have you guys on and have, people from around the world that have been in it for years and you guys just have all, sharing your journey and your stories. And, so I think that that's the coolest part because everybody's kind of, it was like they're all doing it on their own and nobody knew what everybody else was doing the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fun to start coming together in the industry and kind of having our own community, building communities. Very macro, I guess.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
yeah. So, okay. So my last question, which I ask everybody is let's fast forward 10 years. Where do you see co-living in the future?
Um, I think, that nowadays co-living is kind of the exception that rather than the rule. Like most people are still looking for their own apartment or to share their apartment just with another flatmate. When you travel somewhere for a medium period of time, you don't necessarily go to a co-living, you look into other renting platforms on the internet. So I feel it's still, the exception rather than the rule for many people. And I think that in 10 years from now, it's going to be definitely the rule. As mega cities become to be more pricey for real estate and new business models arise, and new generations are looking for more flexible options as well, and are looking to connect with like-minded community because the more and more, with this remote work and digital nomads, there's also a lot of talk about solitude and so on. So people are looking to look for people that are similar to them. I think it's definitely going to be the rule. And I think the more we will find very niche, like co-living spaces, perhaps, like co-living spaces just for, I don't know, entrepreneurs, or co-living spaces just, pet friendly or for families. These are other things that we will also see how the industry is going to serve these audiences. So this is what I think I will see. And also like, landlords knowing the word co-living much more, I think.
Well, everybody knows my story. It took 40, I had to talk to 40 landlords and like got hung up on time and time again when we did our LA home, which was only, beginning in 2018. It wasn't that long ago. Everybody's, what's co-living? I don't get it. Hanging up.
Yeah, exactly. What? I think it's like coworking, right? Like in the beginning, it was like coworking.
That's what I would
that?
say. And they still were like not getting it. I'm like, come on, don't you understand? And then you would talk before too about like sustainability, like, concepts that are specifically, that are sustainable, that are based on sustainability, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's even in the Co-Living Hub conference, I met one of these guys, Eco Spaces, that they were having this concept on sustainability, and I just keep thinking about it. And with the recent, a lot of news about it and people becoming more and more and more informed about the climate change and this, I think it is important that we bring the question as well, that how can the co-living industry help somehow in this? Like, we are already sharing many resources, so that I think that just by that we are reducing a lot of our carbon footprint, but we can even take it to another level. So thinking about like carbon footprint zero co-living spaces, like I'm living here and I'm actually zero carbon waste. So I think this is gonna be hopefully at one point very important. And just like you decide how many carbon dioxide this flight will take or this train is going to take, and you decide based on that, why not about where the place where you live, and the electricity and the water and the facilities and the location where it is, and all these kind of things. I think it will eventually play a big role. So hopefully co-living can be one of those window of opportunities to help a little bit on this.
No, and how cool is that? Because, well, the built environment, so construction is one of the biggest contributors to that issue, right? Even over cars on the road. So you're right. Like, how do we offset? How do we do carbon neutral? And again, more people sharing more space. We're not built, or repurposing space is the best thing, right? So yeah, I think it's going to be really, really fun to see the innovation in that sector, coming forward in the next 10 years. So.
And technology, right? Like, I think technology is going to also play a big role in real estate. We already see it nowadays with some appliances at home that you can activate from your phone, or the lights or the curtains and so on. But I think technology can be much more implemented. So yeah, let's see where it takes us.
I know, good stuff. Well, it'll be a fun ride for sure. Hope to see you out in LA at the next Co-Living Hub conference in
Yeah,
April 2020. It sounds like it's so far away, but it's going to be here like anytime.
I know, right? Yeah, yeah. Everything happens so fast, and yeah, I hope to see you just before I go to the conference at the Seedstars Summit in Switzerland.
Oh, yes. It gives me an excuse to come back to Switzerland. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
this week.
you.
Really appreciate it and love what you guys are doing.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and yeah, talk to you soon. See you soon as well.
Perfect. Bye. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you want to learn more about co-living, you could check out my book on Amazon, The Co-Living Code. And of course, if you're looking for the perfect software to power your co-living concept, check out kindred.io, KNDRD.io. Thanks. And a quick thank you to SPX Agency for all of the graphics, animation, and design on our YouTube channel.